So low, won't pull me to the creek. Ain't gonna be raining. No blow, shake a wind throughout those nights. Wrong drink weather, windows in leather. What's up, guys? Thanks for joining on this. There's something on my camera lens here. Hold on. Must have been a little better. Pouring some baits here, pouring some heads in my garage, and I figured that I'd just go live and see if we can talk fishing for a while. Been out here in the garage for quite a while, and I am pouring up some Midwest finesse jigs, also known as the Ned head, but this is the weedless version of it. Be using a couple of molds today. This is the weedless Midwest finesse jig. This is the assorted size MF or MW WMF 6A. Really tough to read backwards. From Do It. We're also going to be using the Midwest finesse jig right here, which is the standard Ned rig. And then one of my favorite jigs to throw when it gets cold is a football jig, and this is the Do It mold jig. But you can see here, I'm sure I made a video about it, talking about how I've modified this jig mold to have high temp silicone in here, so I can put wired weed guards in there. I really like them a lot. But it's been a crazy couple of days here in Ohio. We've got more snow in the last I'm guessing 24 hours than we have in probably the last 5 or 6 years that I remember. Got about 6 inches of snow here in Ohio. Trying to get out here in the garage. Misty and I got out here and cleaned this thing up. I've lived here for a better part of 3 years, and it's or let's see, it'll be 3 years this Father's Day is when I moved in. My dad left this house to me, which I'm super thankful for. But he was a hoarder of sorts, so I had to get a lot of stuff out of here. They always say one man's trash is another man's treasure, and that's definitely obvious for my dad because he wouldn't let anybody throw anything away, which is kind of the way I am. And I'm sure you guys have been there before, where you're like, oh, you know what? I'll need that sometime, and then you grab it and you put it in your garage and you have that thing for like 10 years and you throw it away and you're like, you know what? I've had this thing for 10 years. I'm not going to need it. There's no way I'm going to need it because I've had it for 10 years and I didn't even know I had it, but I remember keeping it because I said it would be helpful. Then you throw it away, and then 2 weeks later, you're like, I got one of those. And then 2 weeks ago, you threw it away, and that's the way it goes. Well, one of the things that I do this time of year, obviously, is pour some baits up. And the reason that is because, one, I like to throw them. I waste a lot of them. I get them hung up, especially Ned rigs. But I'll be going to Lake St. Clair here in a couple. Man, it's going to be here soon before I know it. Second week in April is when I'm going to be going. So I'm going to make sure that I have myself and my buddies stocked up for that time of year. The one thing I'll tell you is I made a mistake, and it wasn't really my mistake. It was I bought my molds initially before I partnered with Do It Molds from Barlow's Tackle, and they had this hook right here listed as it working for the Midwest Finesse jig, which is the Ned rig. I get this issue where the lead, hopefully you guys can see that there, the lead pours around the eye, and it ruins the head. Like, because you can remelt it, but they take these really teeny tiny bait keepers, and that is, it's just wasteful because when you melt that, you can never get that back. And I'll see if I can pour one here that I find if the mold gets really hot, then it will do it. No pun intended. But this hook is not intended for this mold. Before I partnered with Do It Molds, you know, years ago, I messaged Do It because I thought I had a defective mold, because I couldn't get these things to do what I wanted to, and this one did the exact same thing. You can see there all that flashing and stuff. I have no clue why that is. Got a little wire brush here. I'm gonna just make sure there's nothing sticking, because if this mold doesn't collapse all the way together, you're gonna have some problems. Another thing is that a lot of people don't know is that you have to oil these hinges. Matter of fact, it says right here, oil hinge often. Use a little Aerocryl, spray it in the hinge. When it gets hot, it does kind of stink a little bit, but it will improve your pores for sure. Now, let's see if we can get this thing working. It's really frustrating, to be honest with you, because what happened was I bought 1,000 of these hooks, and they weren't cheap. I mean, I think it was like 200, like the whole thing, like said and done, for the mold, 1,000 hooks and 1,000 of these keepers was like $260 or something. You know, so I was thinking, you know, 1,000 Ned rigs, that's a ton. Like, I won't be able to use that in 10 years. But Kyle fishes them, my buddy Dusty fishes them. So we just stocked up. And then when I bought these hooks, and they don't pour, still doing the same thing. Like, I don't know why some of them pour perfectly fine, others do not. You can see it fills the eye full of that stuff from the lead. Really frustrating. Sometimes you can work with it and get that lead out of there. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's just a wasted deal. I've even done this. I've put this thing in a pair of pliers like this, and I've hit them with a torch to try to get the eye uncovered. It takes a while. I'm sure I'm probably degrading the performance of that eye by heating it up like that. It's just a lot of extra work for a head that I could buy for, you know, a couple bucks, but I'm just gonna have to bite the bullet and buy some new hooks. It's just the way it is. Kind of sucks, but so I think I've told most of you guys, or you guys have seen it on the lives on Tuesdays. We do a thing. Oh, live on Tuesdays, obviously. You guys all know about it. What's up? But I've made a determination, or made a decision, to fish the Northern Series of the Toyota, or the Toyota Series, which it's been a big goal of mine for a long time. I wanted to fish bigger level tournaments, so I started fishing the BFLs when I very first started, and the BFLs were amazing. I met a ton of cool people through the BFLs. One thing that I'm sure you guys out there that fish all the time, or if you fish a BFL, you'll know that if you are fishing a BFL to get rich, you might as well forget it. Because the amount of time that it takes to fish and the amount of money that it takes to get out there and do it, you know, entry fees and all that other stuff, you pretty much have to win a BFL to make any money. So this year I am going to put my money where my mouth is and go big time. I'm going to fish the Toyota Series as a co-angler, which I've wanted to do for a while. I've got to the point where I'm not getting any younger, I'm not that old, obviously. I'm 40 years old. I'll be 40 in March. But I'm never going to have the ability to do this stuff for the rest of my life, which is, that's obviously a given. So I'm putting my name in the hat, and I'm going to see what happens. It could be one of those deals where it's the biggest flop ever, or it could be one of those deals where, it turns out all right. So we'll see. First tournament is first week of June. It's at the Potomac River in Maryland. Then after that, it is Lake Champlain. I think that's in July. So I'm really excited about that one. I'm a huge fan of smallmouth. Lake Champlain obviously has them. Could get very big up there in a hurry, so I'm super glad that I'm fishing as a co-angler. Some people probably know the water a little bit better than I do. They're obviously going to know it better than I do because I've never been there. And then the last tournament ends up in August, and it is in the St. Lawrence River, which is another, obviously, hammer hole for smallmouth. I'm really excited about that. First, getting the opportunity to get out there and try my hand at bigger tournaments. Fishing as a co-angler it's a fun, unique way to fish. You meet a ton of people. If you're trying to get into the world of bass fishing tournament competitively, I would look at fishing a smaller series as a co-angler like the BFL, just to get your feet wet. It's a really nice deal. A lot of them are usually pretty close to your house. But again, you're not going to win a ton of money. I would recommend then trying to look in bigger tournaments. But the reason I wouldn't just rock and roll and try to roll the dice immediately on a huge tournament like, the Toyota Series is the fact that, you have to understand what goes into it. There's a lot of things that happen. Most of the time when I am a co-angler, Kyle and I always travel and fish together. We always fish the same tournament trails. But you as a co-angler are kind of required to do certain things. I would recommend you going to the first pre-tournament meeting that is ever involved with you going. And nowadays, I don't even know if they have them live anymore as far as in person. Because of COVID, I think they do like Zoom meetings, which is actually really good because you don't actually have to be there. But those tournaments pre-tournament meetings allow you to meet the people that you're going to be fishing with, meet the tournament director, get the tournament director's number, because in case something would go wrong on the water, you have the ability to do so, call somebody or what have you. But as a co-angler in a tournament like that, there's a few things that I think that you're required to do. One of those is, it's not imperative that you know how to do it, but it's pretty important, is to know how to properly back a boat into the water and also properly park a trailer. And here's what I mean by that. These people that are fishing these big tournaments as a boater, as a pro, as they're called, got a lot of money wrapped up in these things, man. Like, somebody's fishing out of a new Phoenix or something. They're looking at $80,000-$90,000 for the boat, $70,000+ for a tow rig. And I've seen a lot of horror stories. I've heard a lot of horror stories. Somebody jackknifed Kyle's trailer into his truck, caused like $4,000 worth of damage, and didn't even tell him. I don't know if they didn't know it or they just didn't want to pay for it. But being able to put a trailer where it needs to be parked is stressful. Especially, I don't care if you've done it a million times. As a seasoned somebody that's backed up a trailer, guys, I've backed up a trailer thousands of times. Not only my own trailer, but in tournaments like that and stuff. But it's very frustrating. It takes a lot of courage to do it at first because you're in somebody else's rig. Their seat is always different than the way you drive. Sometimes they have big trucks like a 2500 or whatever. It's really, it's kind of tough to deal with and tough to see out of. Some people have camper shells on their stuffs. I've actually backed a trailer in for a guy who had a bed camper in his, one of the campers that go in his bed of his truck. And you can't see anything out of there. But being able to put the trailer where you need to is one of the most important things as a co-angler that I think that you need to know, because a lot of times they overbook the parking lots for these tournaments. The only place I've ever seen that like will hold everybody is like Metro Park or Lake St. Clair. The one at Harley Ensign is really big, but they're normally you're parking super close to each other. You're parking in grass. You're parking in other places. So knowing how to back a trailer in, knowing how to park a trailer is something that you definitely need to be comfortable with. Now, one of the things is if you don't back a trailer and you don't know how to back a trailer, make sure you let your angler or your pro know that when you talk to them initially, like, hey guys, I'm just getting into this. I don't own a boat. I am not going to be able to back you in the water. That way, they can make a decent idea. They can have an idea of what they need to do, because I've had that happen to me before. Kyle's had it happen to him. But you can make different. You can make kind of you can make plans for it. Like if Kyle has a co-angler that can't back a truck, and we normally do it anyway. We get to the ramp really early, like super early. Like tournament starts at 7. We're there by like 5:30. And if it's really cold, that's brutal. But I usually back his trailer in the water and go park his trailer for him, and then I just hang out on the dock there until my boater gets there. But one of the things that I think that a lot of people don't understand is that in the co-angler world is that you also, in my opinion, are required to pony up some gas money at the end of the day. It's not a requirement. It's not in the rules. You're not going to get banned from BASS or FLW if you don't give the boater any gas money. But you guys know as well as I do, fuel is not cheap. You're looking at, if you're running non-ethanol, you're looking at $4+ a gallon, usually, or 380 something, which is a lot of money. I don't go absurd. $50, I think, is what I normally give my boaters. And a lot of times, they'll tell you they don't want it or whatever, but I always give it to them anyway. It's wear and tear on their boat, 1, and 2, I get to go fishing with them for a day, so it's pretty good. I've had some crazy horror stories though. Like I drawed a guy in a BFL in the Buckeye division, and it was entertaining to say the least. This old fella, I felt so bad for him because of the fact that he, he had a lot of stuff going on. He had a lot of health problems. He was very, I don't know. I get where he was probably, down on his luck, because this guy was probably in his 70s, smoked like a freight train, which is whatever. It's his boat. We were outside. I didn't mind it. Wasn't like I was stuck with him in his truck smoking like that, but he smoked. I bet he smoked 5 packs of cigarettes that day when we were fishing. And I was talking to him and was having a pretty heart-to-heart conversation with this guy, because I was catching fish and he wasn't, and he was getting so frustrated. He was cussing like a sailor, screaming and throwing his stuff on the boat, and just throwing a temper tantrum. He acted like an 8-year-old kid or a 5-year-old kid. And turns out the guy was dying of cancer, lung cancer, to be exact. Which, I guess if you already have lung cancer, there's no, you figure that it's gonna take you out anyway. There's no sense to stop smoking. But he definitely didn't stop. Like I said, if he smoked 1 cigarette that day, he smoked 5 packs. So maybe that's what it was. But he was an old codger, man, and he it was one of the most miserable days I ever had fishing, just because he was so miserable. I couldn't have a good time. I ended up finishing like 7th place in the tournament, so I had a good day, and it was a real good day. I had 5 fish in a boat before he even caught one, and it was just kind of, it was what it was. But it was one of those deals where there was another good part of the story too that was crazy. somehow Kyle's fishing as a boater, obviously. I'm co-angler with this guy, and we're pulling up. If you know Maysville, we're pulling up into Cabin Creek, and it's towards the end of the tournament. And Kyle's fishing the mouth of Cabin Creek already, and this old man that I'm with pulls up next to Kyle and starts fishing right down the bank, going towards Kyle, and then cuts Kyle off and cusses Kyle like it's Kyle's fault. Man, I was laughing in the back of the boat, and Kyle was just like looked at me. He was like, "What is going on here?" He's like, I've been here for 20 minutes. Like it was just so funny. But I told Kyle at the end of the day, I was like, that dude, he has a pretty rough life ahead of him, and he just was not having fun that day. But I've had some. That's one of, I think I've fished like 20 tournaments in the BFL style of things, and that's one of very few that I wouldn't go fishing with again. There was several people, and I would say of the people you're going to get like that, it's going to be 1 out of 100, maybe 1 out of 1,000 even, I hope. But most people are there to have fun and fish, and you're going to find way more people that are going to be fun and they're going to be friends with for the rest of your life because of those tournaments than you are that people that you're just tell stories about, like I did that guy. I find a lot, like, first off, you get to go out and fish with people who are like-minded like yourself. You get to go out there. I've learned so much from the co-angler side of things. I find the ability to use most of the high-end technology on the planet. Got to use LiveScope, or got to see LiveScope happen, used first in a tournament on a BFL. And it's kind of like everybody's talking about LiveScope right now because of the co-angler side of things. It's really tough to catch fish if your boater is LiveScoping. And if you go someplace like Lake St. Clair and stuff like that, that's not going to play into effect. Around here, you're probably going to have that. But I met a ton of people fishing that are really good, way better than I am. And I've learned a lot of things. I've learned a lot of what to do, what not to do, how to approach different situations. Allowed me to gain knowledge, and that's what it's all about. Is trying to become a better fisherman through seeing people fish and learning techniques. And I watched a guy, and I think that some people learn from the back of the boat too. And I say that kind of like out of spite, I guess. I don't know if it's spite, but fishing Maysville again, different guy, not the same guy that I was just talking about, in a BFL. And this guy told me that you're going to get some people that will tell you what they're doing night one, and then you get some people that won't ever tell you what they're doing as far as like tournament or like techniques and things, which is kind of a pain. But this guy he was very adamant about not telling me what he was doing. I was like, man, you got any idea? I always ask the boater, hey, can you give me an idea how you're catching them? That way I know what to rig this evening. I don't want to go, be a half hour rigging baits when we get started, because I don't know what you're throwing. Like, I don't care that you tell me what exactly you're throwing, but tell me what you're doing. You're throwing top water, are we flipping and pitching, what have you. That way I could be prepared. Well, this one guy wouldn't tell me. He told me that I would tell all my buddies, and he was on a bunch of fish, and he wasn't going to tell me. All right, well, whatever. So we get there. I tied on a white tackle box spinnerbait, because white spinnerbaits in the Ohio River catch fish. And it's really a really good go-to bait, and it was in the fall. So I started, I just said, you know what? I'm just going to tie on a spinnerbait. I know they'll eat it. So tied on a spinnerbait. This dude, nice guy, by the way. He wasn't a punk or anything. He just was adamant that he didn't want to tell me because he thought I was going to be a loudmouth to all my buddies, and it was going to cost him fish, whatever. It's all good. But long story short, I started throwing this white spinnerbait behind him, and he was throwing, he was flipping and pitching, and then I caught 4 fish. I didn't catch a limit. I caught 4 fish on this spinnerbait in about 2 hours, which on the Ohio River That is a stellar day. So I was pumped. I was like, yeah, buddy, this is it. The dude power poles down in this creek we're in, gets in his tackle box, finds a white spinnerbait that's similar to the one I'm throwing. It wasn't from the tackle box, he wasn't from my area. But he tied it on, started fishing in front of me with that white spinnerbait. He caught 4 fish right in front of me, so I would have caught those fish. I kept throwing the spinnerbait, couldn't get bit because he was catching the fish in front of me. So I was like, you know what? I need 1 fish. He's throwing a spinnerbait. I got to do something different. So I picked up the wacky rig, threw a blue. I don't know why I grabbed a blue worm. Not my favorite one. Matter of fact, I think it was probably just the first one I grabbed. I was kind of frustrated. So I grabbed it, put it on a wacky rig. I made 2 casts after that. Cast it into a big old tree that we were fishing around. Threw this blue wacky rig up in there and caught a 4-pounder. And he was very frustrated. But that's what I was talking about, people learning from behind the boat. I ended up finishing 6th place, and I'm lying to you. I only had 4 fish. I had 3 and that 4-pounder, and I was probably a pound from winning the whole thing. If I'd have had that 5th fish, I would have won it. So had he not been throwing that white spinnerbait in front of me, or had I had the gumption to keep throwing that thing while he was, there casting in front of me, I could have probably stayed in it and won it. But coulda, shoulda, woulda. That's why they call it, fishing and not catching. But that, fishing tournaments like that, you get in that situation, it allows you to make good decisions or terrible decisions, whatever. But you can get in your head really quick, and sometimes it pays off. I fished with a fellow from Michigan in the BFLs up there in the Michigan division. Which, by the way, if you're interested in getting your feet wet in a BFL and can drive to Lake St. Clair, those are always fun, man. You have to really catch them because people up there just absolutely smash them. But you can go up there, pretty much catch a limit anytime that you want to. But draw this guy. He tells me I always look up my boaters. You can look them up on FLW or BASS depending on what tournament series you're fishing. And these guys, it shows you how many tournaments that you've won, how much money you've won fishing with these things. And I always look them up the night before just to see, 1, what area they're from, and 2, how good they are, or how good they are compared to the fish that they've caught. And it was this one guy had won a ton of money. He won like $250,000 fishing. I was like, dude, this dude's a hammer. And sure enough, he was. He was an amazing fisherman. But we pulled up on this one spot in Lake St. Clair. I'm not going to give it away because it's his spot, and I've been there a couple times since then. But we pulled into this spot. He spot locks down. We're in 3-footers. It's pretty rough that day. Spot lock, kind of keeping us in the area. Water, the trolling motors coming out of the water sometimes on those big waves. But we sit in this one spot and throw Ned rigs, which I'm pouring right now. We threw these things, and I'm a big fan of a pink TRD. I don't know why it catches fish, no clue. I don't know why smallmouth like it so much, but it will absolutely catch some. So, anywho, we pull up in this spot. I said, I am the type of guy that I always ask my boater. I think the boater should give you an idea of what they expect of you. Like, for example, if somebody is spot locked and they're casting out the front of the boat at, I don't know, live scope fish. If I was the boater, I wouldn't care if you casted past me as far as like my body up towards the front of the boat. As long as you're not crossing me and as long as you're not hitting me with the lure, you can cast wherever you want to. But this guy, spot locked down, he was one of those guys that was like, this is your half of the boat, this is my half of the boat, don't cast up here towards me. Oh, well, all right, whatever. So I started casting this pink TRD out of the back of the boat. The very first fish I catch, which is like 2 casts in the morning, is a 5.5 pound, just absolute hammer. And he is like, he's catching fish. He's casting out the front of the boat at this rock pile that I find out later because the sun come out and I could see it. He was casting at this rock pile that he had marked, and we sat there on that one spot, and I ended up having 19 pounds, I think, in my best 5. I lost an absolute giant on a crankbait. I mean, a giant. There's certain fish, when they jump, you can just tell that they have some shoulders to them. This fish jumped, and the fish jumped. When it jumped, my boater let out a scream. He was like, "Oh my God, that's a giant!" I was like, "Yeah, that's a giant." So I'm fighting it. It jumps one more time, spits this. I was throwing a 1.5 actually. Throws it. But that will turn. I'd say if that was a 6-pounder, probably I would have won the tournament. But I finished. That's what's so crazy about Lake St. Clair, is you go up there fishing Lake St. Clair. I had right at 19 pounds, right, as a co-angler. You have 19 pounds as a boater in most tournaments in this area. You're winning. You could win 2-day tournaments with 19 pounds. But this day, I had 19 pounds. My boater had 22, I think, out of the front of the boat, and we caught every single one of these fish off of that rock pile or around that rock pile, which was crazy. So I go up, weigh my fish in. The guy's there, he's like, "Holy crap, he's got 19 pounds as a co-angler." Took over the lead for about 20 minutes. Ended up finished 13th, I think, with 19 pounds. And that's crazy. Like, it really makes you think, like, holy crap, 19 pounds in this area. Again, you win 2-day tournaments. You can win a 3-day tournament with 19 pounds around here sometimes. It's just nuts. But I'm fishing the Toyota Series this year, come hell or high water. Just really interested in getting my chops back. I didn't do much tournament fishing this past year. I'm ready to get back there and get after it. I'm really hoping to grab my boat. I'm hoping to do some videos about it soon when the weather gets a little bit warmer. I put a new Ultrex on my boat, which I'm going to do a video about, which is amazing. The Ultrex Quest is freaking phenomenal. But there's a couple of things that I got to have for my boat soon. I've been sponsored by Odyssey batteries for the last 5 years. I've been running their PCM 2150s. And they've been amazing. They're great batteries. But I need batteries for my boat here soon. They don't last forever. I'm going to run lithiums, because right now lead acid batteries are just as expensive as some of the Odysseys, or the lead acid batteries. Odysseys right now are close to $400 a piece. So I need 4 batteries now, about $1,600. Got some ideas of some companies that's going to come on board, I think, with on another line and kind of help us out a little bit. Looking to try to get into Dakota Lithiums. But my biggest thing is, there's a lot of hate about LiveScope, but I want a LiveScope setup. I'd love for Humminbird to come out with their new version. I would love to have a Humminbird setup, because again, I have all Humminbird stuff on my boat. Much rather buy just one transducer and call it a day. But if that doesn't happen, which it doesn't look like it's going to, I'm going to be looking at buying a 12-inch Garmin with a LSV34 system, which is not cheap. So I need your guys' support and your help. Share out my videos. I'd appreciate it. Trying to get this following up to 5,000 subscribers very soon. But talk to your guys' ear off enough. I'm going to hop off here. I'm going to paint some of these heads that I made up here. And we'll see you guys on Tuesday live. Might hop in the truck and run to Charleston here in just a minute for the hunting and fishing show. Hard to say. But you guys know the routine. If you guys can, get out there and lean on them. We'll see you next time on Another Line.